The Monday Mornings podcast is presented by Southern Michigan Bank and Trust, continuous banking since 1872. Switch today and visit smb-t.com. Welcome inside the Monday Mornings podcast. Andy Hawley along with Jennifer Scanlon. How are you?
I'm good. Happy Monday morning.
Happy Monday. We're already on to the second half of our season.
We are.
Yeah,
we are.
it's
Welcome.
crazy.
Welcome to the second half.
Welcome.
We're going to kick off the second half with a two-parter.
Yeah, two-parter. We're going to bring in just a good friend of to the program, really.
Yeah.
Matt Lehman. He has been a longtime educator, and I've always enjoyed how people can stay in one place for over 30 years. And then, especially in a small town, I'm kind of envious of that lifestyle, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that he has it because even though he's not in a school district where our kids happen to go to school, his passion and work ethic bleeds over.
You're right.
Into the rest of the county. So I'm really excited to learn more about him and his interesting journey.
I think all great schools make great communities, and I think people
true.
need to realize that hey, just because you aren't part of that school, that doesn't mean that this doesn't make this school great.
Yep.
So we are going to now bring in Matt Lehman, and this is the Monday Mornings podcast presented by Southern Michigan Bank and Trust, Leave It to Beavers Auto Detailing, Partners Bulk Logistics, Printer Source Plus, and Barker Weber Insurance Agency.
Let's do it.
Welcome inside the Monday Mornings podcast presented by Southern Michigan Bank and Trust. Your trusted co-hosts, Andy Hawley and Jennifer Scanlon here. And today we have with us Matt Lehman, and Matt is all things Concord, Michigan, Concord, USA.
Yes.
And I wanted to have you on. We've known each other for probably 20 years now, Matt, but you've had so many different jobs in education, but at the same location. And I've always admired the way Matt has been able to work with athletes, non-athletes, young kids, older kids, coach, administrator. So we thought we'd get you in here and ask you a little bit about how you were able to do that in a small town and why, and you dedicated your career to education. What's been your personal why, do you think, that's kept you going all of these years?
I don't know. I always felt like that was my goal, was to be in one place forever.
Yeah.
Jack Kerspila was the athletic director at Reading for years, and when I came in, he was there 40 years.
Yeah.
And he was, and I didn't want it to be a stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
I see, sometimes different strokes for different folks, but that wasn't my style.
How old were you when you got there?
24.
Okay.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
So at 24, did you want to stay in the same place the rest of your life?
No, but I can't imagine finding your professional home at 24.
And maybe I didn't know that right away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think I always looked up to people that, Chuck Miller, Vandercook Lake.
Yeah.
Sure.
Jack Kerspila. Those guys, they stayed.
You're right about that because they become a part of the legacy in the community, and you don't hear that anymore because we see so much turnover and people kind of climbing that ladder and getting in and getting out. So,
and I think for me, it's like being small. I feel like I try to have a little edge. That's an edge for me, like with kids wanting to go to different schools, like they're going to want to leave Concord to go to a neighboring school because they think it's. I'm like. Go for it. Because we want to play them. I mean, that's our mindset. And we're little and small, and we want to compete against them. That's,
Has that grass is greener? I mean, has that gotten worse over the years, the course of your career?
Sure. Yeah. For sure. I think that's, you're starting to see that move, and that's why I think MHSA changed some of the rules with regards to transfer.
I think for my kids, like I would never want, and everyone's family is different, but I would never want my kids going to like 3 different schools over the course of their last 5 years of middle school and high school. It's goofy. Relationships, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, building the long-term relationship in a community that then the whole idea is then somebody comes back and gives back to that community or a similar small community like you did. Yep. Is there anything in your story leading up to that you think would be a big surprise to our listeners and maybe people that have been students or athletes that you've worked with?
Meaning like with regards to?
Well, just kind of your journey, like any highs or lows that would be really surprising.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, for getting here, my mom was, probably the major influence in my world. My dad died when I was 6 years old.
Oh, wow. I didn't
So
know
a lot of
that.
people don't know that. So that's something new. So and my mom was just a role model, leader. She was the man and the husband, and
Sure.
She was everything.
Mom and dad in the relation, in the family.
What do you remember about that?
Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
I remember coming downstairs and overhearing her talking, sobbing on the phone, telling somebody. That's how I found out. And I was lucky. I had older brothers and sisters. I was the youngest of 5.
Oh, wow.
And my sister's 19 years older than I am.
Oh.
Another brother, 18. Another brother that passed away a few years ago. He was 17 years old. And then I have a brother that is he's almost 11 years older than me. So I'm the
baby,
youngest by a
baby.
lot.
Yeah.
So I was just really very fortunate, But my mom was very active she was the city clerk in Whittemore till she was 89. She died. She died 3 years ago.
She worked till she was 89?
Yeah, she died. Yeah, she was like, and not to get on a topic about her, but like, for instance, my dad died in 1974, and when she was, I think, 84, 85. She got a knock at the door, and mom was on the school board for 25 years. Oh, wow. And she got a knock at the door, and it was this guy, and he was holding on the newspaper. He goes, "I'm looking for the lady in this picture," and mom looked at him, and she thought it was his brother, but it was my mom's high school sweetheart.
No,
Yeah,
sir.
his wife had passed away a year ago, and he came and looked for her.
You're kidding me.
She calls me. And she goes, he got there at 11, and I'm the first call, because I'm the baby, and I'm the
tight.
The softie.
Yes, and she calls me and she says, and he stayed till like 5, and she says, and I think he's going to come back. I think he's. Long story short, they got married.
Oh,
They
that's
remarried.
amazing.
And they were married for about 10 years. They called it the Royal Wedding of Whittemore. 500 people at the reception.
You're
Sir.
kidding me.
It was incredible.
Wait, how old
Huge.
were they?
How old were you?
Well, this was.
This was recently.
Well, within about 10, 12 years.
Okay.
So I was in my and
Wow.
so
Was that a treat?
it was because what it did was it really kind of Mom had somebody that because he liked to play cards and he was good to her but it was just it was great for her, but for her to have that, the Channel 5 WNEM TV5, they came to the reception.
Really?
It was like
awesome.
my nephew leaked it so it was one of those. It was 68. They had seen each other in 68 years.
That's amazing.
Gosh, that's so
So-
romantic.
No
that's-
Facebook involved, just
no
a
Facebook, no.
newspaper and a knock on
there
the
it is,
door.
yeah.
And your mom was a single mom
She was
and a
si-
widow for decades.
Yeah, my dad died in 74. So
Oh my God.
and they married. Yeah, she was 46, so almost 40 years.
Oh
Wow.
my gosh. That's incredible.
That is amazing. Well, that kind of explains a little bit about why I know family is so
is.
so
Yes.
important
Oh,
to
she's
you,
been
and
everything.
I see that. Let's go back to when you were 24. Here we are. You're the father of your youngest daughter coming through the school. Opportunity. You get to go watch her play at the Breslin Center. When you're 24, what type of tell me what you thought the journey was going to be. What did you expect?
Honestly, I had no idea. I can remember, and this was back during a time when finding jobs was tough.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was an odd combination of physical education, business, major, minor, with a little bit of coaching. So there was a posting, and I had applied. I had interviewed in Bridgeport. I interviewed in Croswell, Lexington. I interviewed all these different
Did you want to
places.
stay in the state, though?
I just wanted a job. I taught in Tawas for a year, but it was a 1-year deal. A lady took a maternity leave, and I loved it. I really thought Tawas was going to be my place.
Okay.
Because that was 15 miles from where I grew up, and my friends were up there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. So I applied for this job, and it was physical education, business teacher education, athletic director.
That was the job?
So I applied for it.
And you were perfect for all of them.
Young 24-year-old ready to go.
Funny story is I have one of my closest friends I went to high school with and college with. He had a similar background. We both got called for interviews for the job.
Oh my God.
For the same job.
For the same job. We come down together. for the interview. All right. And
You drive down together.
yes, and we did, and so the interview was like it said 8:00. Well, it didn't specify. I even looked at it. And I thought it was 8:00 in the morning.
In the morning.
I got there and I'm kind of looking through the school, and the principal stops me and says, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here for my interview." He goes, "That's 8:30 tonight." Well, I had a conflict, and I'm like, so I had to go. We had to go back. 'Cause both of us were
Right.
early,
Oh my
and so I ended up coming back on Saturday.
Oh.
And I came back, so I'm at Taos, and we did project graduation. It was like a lock-in for all the seniors, okay? So I'm chaperoning this. So my interview was like 9 in Concord in the morning, a.m. So I stay up all night, and my nephew drives me down. My nephew's like 6 years younger than I am. So
Oh my
he's
gosh,
like, so because my sister's older, so, and he's, always been super tight with him. So he drives me down so I can just at least catch a little shut-eye. Well, I go in and I got so much adrenaline, I think, from being up all night and, whatever. And I ended up, I interviewed and I, actually Bob Erschlitz was the teaching position. So Bob was a longtime Concord coach, legendary. It was his teaching position that so I got back to Taos and my principal came down. He goes, "Hey," he says, "I just got a call from Concord and you're their number one candidate."
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm like, "I am." So
How many years have you been there now?
well, this is 32.
Wow.
Yep. So
Wow.
I came in 93, 94 was my first school year.
That's amazing.
Yep. And
You remember that year?
Yeah, since the year graduated from high school, Andy, thanks for
right.
always pointing out my age.
That's right. I can't forget that.
my thing.
It's getting harder to add up the ages for all of us for sure.
Yes.
You work with students at every age level, and when we talk to educators, we always ask them, how'd you get into elementary, or why do you want to teach high school? Well, you've taught all ages. Tell me a little bit about that.
I think you got to be, they're different, but they're fun. I mean, I don't know if it's like being a chameleon a little bit. You gotta. I tell you, I taught elementary phys ed for quite a few years, and I loved it because it was back during a time when, and I felt like I was athletic director and I was teaching, and I had the great opportunity to see kids and like point them in like, dude, you need to be a football player.
Right? Oh, nice.
You need to play basketball, because it was these kids that sometimes the kids that would come down would be like my favorite kids might not be the classroom teacher's favorite kids.
Right.
Sure.
Because the kids that drove me crazy are the kids that didn't want to participate and wanted to sit out. I like those kids that were tree climbers, rough,
full speed.
Because that's, so that was a great place to really make contact. Then I was coaching basketball, so I had I was able to, have a camps and because I knew those kids all by name. And if you're ever having a bad day, and when you're an elementary gym teacher and you're having a bad day, walk through the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Because you're the guy.
Yeah.
Mr. Lehman. It is. It's and so that's what I like. Now middle school, oddly enough, in some ways was my favorite.
Really?
And most people wouldn't say that.
I would.
But man, you've got to bring it. And
you do have to bring it.
Right. You got to be.
Do you ever get scared
you
of them?
You got to be a wisecracker.
Yeah.
You got to roast them a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's just their world. If they come in, how cool they come in as little kids and they leave as young adults. You just see that maturity level. And then high school is just, obviously they're independent. You deal with other issues, but you can have, more genuine conversations. Kids that want to go to college, or kids that maybe are interested in being in my field. As I have one kid right now that is interested in doing that, and we have like genuine, like he'll come down and we'll have conversations, and I'll talk him through why this is the why of a decision, or this is how I handle this for this reason, because he's planning on going to Spring Arbor. He wants to go into athletic administration, so it's like trying to plant that seed.
And giving real world advice, which I feel like we didn't get. We just didn't get at all. It was all just sunshine and roses and go.
Oh,
but
I don't
there's
know
a
about
lot.
sunshine and roses. It's more like go figure it out.
Yeah, go figure it out. What do you want to do? And then if you don't know what you want to do, you're a loser. Figure it out.
Yeah.
It's amazing. What have you learned about leadership at those different age levels?
You mean from like with regards
like
to
how to be a leader, how to be a leader within the school, even as say, you're not an athletic director. You're
well,
just
I think one thing is kindness is not weakness. Because I think that I'd like to think that I try to build a relationship with kids, and I think that if you're going to be successful as a coach, as an athletic director, as a teacher, I don't care.
Yeah.
You have to build a relationship with kids. I've witnessed some of the, I could name people in my world that are, colleagues, Mike Jurasek. I've never met anybody like Mike Jurasek. Mike Jurasek builds relationships with kids as well as anybody. That's why he's won state championships.
And done it with consistency.
And done it with consistency.
And not flown around the hoop.
He bets on kids that don't get, sometimes that maybe wouldn't get that opportunity in other places.
Yeah.
He really does. Because that kid he's betting on, he might be changing his life.
Yeah.
And through athletics.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the formula for me. I think it's about building relationships.
Well, and this kind of speaks to that, but I feel like your role in leadership throughout education, and probably with your staff too, not just the students, but the staff too, is really instilling resilience and confidence. And how do you do that on a day-to-day basis with all these different personalities and changes in the world?
Well, I think you have to really just have genuine conversations with them on a regular basis.
Sure.
You just, I don't try to be, there's lead managers and there's boss managers, and I'm not a boss manager. I'm a lead manager.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes you have to be a boss manager,
Yeah.
obviously, in some things, but you want to be a lead manager. You want to, we're at a point right now in coaching that, we need teachers. We don't have as many teachers coaching. So we got young people that are, so you have to put them in good positions. So we're going to instill CAP training, which is MHSA, coaches, it's a coaches education program.
Sure.
And all head coaches have to do it. MHSA requires that. Well, we're going to do it across the board.
Oh,
so if
great.
I get a new hire, I'm going to have him do CAP training.
Yeah.
We're going to pay for it. It's like $50, whatever. But
Yeah.
but actually, I reached out to MHSA, and we're actually going to host the CAP session at Concord. So then our coaches can all have an opportunity to come get it. And so I think it's about trying to grow coaches and set them up for success.
Yeah, that's so smart in creating depth, within the field that you've got. And you're right,
you don't know what you don't know.
We don't see as many educators coaching, and it just seems like such a natural fit.
We could
to
dive
take it from
in.
the
We could
classroom
dive
to
into that thing, and there's a whole
Yeah.
So if you're not, you still have to have something else.
Sure.
You have to have, because you got, you can know the sport inside and out, but if you don't have those intangibles, you're probably not going to be successful.
Sure.
If you have the intangibles and you know the sport a little bit, you can grow that area.
Sure.
You can become
I
a better
agree.
coach by going to professional development, go to clinics and mentor with other coaches and those types of things.
Thank you to Southern Michigan Bank and Trust. Ready for better banking? Switch today.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Barker Weber Insurance Agency, Partners Bulk Logistics, and Printer Source Plus. Thank you to our regional partners serving Michigan, Ohio, and beyond. We have so many challenges throughout our daily lives. Schools have challenges like no other. What's the biggest challenge you've had in your 32 years, and then how were you able to overcome that, Matt?
I think, burnout a little bit. It's trying to balance things. I don't think I've always been really good at that. For example, I went out of town for just a long weekend, and our superintendent asked my wife. She goes, she had to email me something. Do you think Matt will check it? And she started laughing. She goes, yeah, he checks it.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard. It's always been hard to get away from the job.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is, I think that if I like to be on top of things, but sometimes I don't always do a very good job of taking a step back and saying, you know what, I need to just not check my email. I need to not check my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you have such a passion for what you do. It probably doesn't even feel like
It
work.
is. It's, I don't know if it's a OCD or being anal, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like it's what's helped me be successful, but it comes with a price sometimes.
Sure.
In this day with kids just, knowing everything that's going on in the world, I think leadership is more important now than ever. What's one leadership quality in education that is non-negotiable?
Oh, man. One leadership quality?
Mm-hmm. Non-negotiable.
I think communication. You got to be a communicator. I think you do. I think you have to be able to communicate with people.
Because that brings me to a point. Because when people don't know, they assume.
Yeah.
And when people that assume, it leads down
right.
the wrong path. So communication is key.
And I think it's I try to if you follow me on social media, if you follow me, I think we probably have a good presence.
Yeah, absolutely.
7:30 this morning, I sent out a text message with information. Just things like, because people are gonna. What you're trying to do is you're trying to prevent. In my world, you're trying to limit the questions because they're coming. Let's get the information out there that answer all those questions ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to communicate. Whatever. So, if you don't communicate, you're going to struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it goes across the board.
It is.
In all relationships.
Yeah.
I read something the other day that said unspoken expectations lead to premeditated resentment. And
that's
I thought,
wise.
Wow,
that's
man.
so crazy true. And I thought about all the different ways that we apply that to our lives. And I can imagine, being a leader both with students, with your staff, your family, your wife, all of that.
That one hit me a little bit.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, by the way, Andy, I need to talk to you about these. No.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah, I'm sure.
So obviously you see both sides of it. How do you see sports being an important part of what shapes the overall education experience?
Well, I think everything you experience within athletics, teamwork, those are all things that you have to have that skill to be successful in life. I've had, for example, let's say, I think more back when I was coaching basketball, playing time is always a challenge.
Yeah.
And when you're at the varsity level, I kind of ran into that as a younger coach and maybe didn't handle it very well. And then I had my preseason meeting, and I think what I said was if your child goes to work at Concord Manufacturing and they don't like how much money they make or they don't like what the job is, are you going to go in there and fight that battle? At what point are we going to teach kids to have those conversations and fight those battles themselves? Now, I'm saying there's certainly exceptions to that and whatever, but I really think it starts there, because it is. It's there's fairness, you got to make, but sometimes. And I think, again, it goes back to communication. I think coaches have to make sure they communicate that kind of stuff and kids know where they stand so you don't have those issues.
Sure.
But I think that we have to teach kids. Kids have to become, and that's a life skill. That's not just that's where sports, again, it's one other thing that I think is really important. You got you're working for a coach or you're playing for a coach is like working for a boss. Maybe.
Yeah.
So.
And working with people you may or may not like or have a lot in common with.
That's exactly right. And
I think the balance and the discipline that it takes to be a student athlete is something that carries really well into adulthood. What advice do you give to kids to keep balance and be successful at that mix?
Well, I think, we talk about do it all. We talked about playing 3 sports.
Yeah.
Be a multi-season athlete.
Yep.
And sometimes you get kids that want to be one sport, one season athletes. And I advise against it. Enjoy the whole experience.
Yeah.
And because you might be good at one sport and you might not be quite as good, but you might be a role player on one team and a star on another. And I think those are you're looking at things from a different perspective when you're in that role.
I think
you're supporting versus being that.
Yeah. Does our society think the word travel means elite?
Sometimes, yeah, it does, and it's really a lot of that. Let's be honest, it's a cash cow.
Money
No
grab,
doubt,
yeah.
it's a grab.
AAU and Disney, those are 2 things.
Well,
Steve Smoyer used to say all the time, "They'll find your money, baby."
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
a
true.
good point. Yeah,
They will.
It is a business.
You go to, we go to Hamilton for AAU basketball tournament, and it's $75 to get in for the weekend. That's crazy.
It's
crazy. And then we try to bump from 5 to 7, and
and people go nuts.
People go crazy. Not, we haven't done that, but we talk about that.
Yeah.
And it's just, it is. And I mean, and I don't know. I guess part of it is like we've talked. Annie knows that I'm not trying to promote my kids, but I think it's cool that my kid right now, she's really good in volleyball. She's really good in basketball, and she's when basketball's done, it's track season, and she wants to be really good in that. And I think that's that's what the high school experience to me should be.
With a school your size, how do you think sports can really shape the entire culture of the community?
Absolutely. I mean, look at our game last night. I mean, people come in droves.
We should have robbed a bank in Concord last night.
Yeah, right.
We don't have
I know.
We don't have a bank in Concord. You have to go take the ATM out of PS or something.
Let's talk small town, right?
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot to do in the small town.
Yeah. I grew up in a small town.
You grew up in a small town,
Yeah.
so you know what it's like. So how do you keep
a John Cougar song? I'm ready to start singing here.
How do you keep the kids out of trouble when there's nothing to do?
Keep them in sports.
Keep them in sports.
Yeah, but there's free time.
Yeah. I don't know, because I guess when I was in school, it's a kind of a do as I say, not do as I did.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. Kids still have to be kids, right?
Absolutely. But no, I think it's just, you just provide healthy opportunities for kids, and to be kids. And I think that's, and I'm really fortunate. My kids, they're just good friend group, and I think that's what you have to have.
Yeah.
So Concord's a small town. It's a smaller school district, and you guys helped with the transition with Albion. A much bigger school, much different demographic. Everything was different. How did that process go, and how did it leave the district?
I think we set the example. I really do. I think that I don't think anybody did it better than us, and I say that with confidence.
So give us the secret
But the
sauce.
first thing I did, not what we did. I went to Terry Molesky was our superintendent. Albion and closed.
Let me jump in a little breakdown. So this is when Albion decided they were closing. And students were left with choices.
It became an open district.
Open district,
Yeah.
right? Marshall, Homer, Concord, Springport.
Yeah.
Maybe some I'm not even thinking about. Maybe even to Battle Creek, right?
Western,
And
yeah.
it was at the time. It was like oh my God, Albion High School?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We've had some unbelievable athletes, some unbelievable alum. And all of a sudden it's gone, and these kids need a place to go.
Yep.
Walk me through this.
Well, I went to Terry Molesky and I said, I think we should reach out to Mike Jurasek, and get Mike Jurasek on board. I knew Mike for years.
Albion guy, yeah.
Albion guy, Concord guy. He started. He's on Concord Wall of Fame. If you know Mike,
He'll tell you.
He'll take you down and show his picture. Anyways, and so you bring Mike down. You bring Mike into the fold. Mike knows the families. Mike's a friendly face. He brings in Dan Davis, and Dan Davis really well. So now we have two faces of Albion at Concord, of two people that are trusted by families.
Nice.
Right.
Now a kid will come in, what's your last name? And then he'll get it, and he'll be like, is this your dad or mom or grandpa or whoever? And he'll make the connection, and that's just how, that's just how. So I think we put some things in place, in my opinion. Not that anybody else did it wrong. I'm not trying to be whatever, but I just felt like that's what we did.
Was there any toughness with it? Was there any problems from some?
I think maybe early on.
Yeah.
But it, like now it's like we just don't deal with issues. We really don't.
Right.
And I say that. I mean, we certainly on a small scale. Not right.
Yeah.
But no, I think our our kids from Albion, they fit in. They're Concord kids.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And we're proud of that.
Yeah. Do we have too many schools in Jackson County, high schools?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
It is a tough question.
Yeah, it is. I think you look around some of these small schools, but Ewan Trout Creek, 56 kids. Oh, look, there are 56 total.
56
In the
kids?
high school.
Stop it.
No, I mean, you try to get that school to go or somewhere else to another school. That community would.
It just won't happen.
Yeah.
It just won't happen.
These small communities, their school is their pride. In
Yeah.
Well, one thing I think I learned when Parkside closed, becoming a high school, or closed their high school,
Yes.
a lot of the high school alums felt like their history was just thrown out and it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And, let's take a look at your career. I mean, Concord is who you are, right? And if Concord wasn't there, it'd be devastating.
Exactly. I think of the Elbin. Go back to Elbin.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's you gotta. I get it. Because I think when you look at I was at my athletic director conference last weekend, and I met the guy who's in charge of like 20. He's oversees all the athletic directors in the Detroit Public Schools.
Oh, geez.
And he's got 20 schools. He has lieutenants and ADs in those buildings. So he's more of a kind of a leadership CEO position.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much contact he has with kids, but it's just different, So, but small school, big opportunity. That's our motto. And
So keep the small schools, keep the districts and sense of community.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's yes. For me, I don't know if there's another model. Bigger is not always better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you get a small school like us. I think, and we get it. Kids will leave, greener pastures, but we also get kids that come from bigger schools that don't like that, and they come here, and you go through the hallway and kids know each other. The teachers all know them. So I think you get some of that.
Yeah.
I challenge some really, really big districts. They don't know every kid in
For
the
sure.
district. I'm pretty close. I mean, I know quite a few.
Yeah. So much to talk about with Matt. Let's make this thing a two-parter, yeah?
Yeah, let's do it. I want to know more. I love the kindness is not a weakness.
I love that. We'll have more with Matt Lehman, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, and we'd like to thank Southern Michigan Bank and Trust.